What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from Mtg We Like Magic, and I'm back. In case you didn't notice, took a little bit more time off than usual between videos this time around. Spent a couple days in Savannah. Met a big fan of the channel, by the way. Dustin, chef over there at Lizzie's, cooked us some awesome gator bites. Never had alligator before, and he made us like the best pasta that I've ever had at a seafood restaurant. So shout out to Dustin, solid dude right there and a great chef. But in any case, super excited to be back. Super excited to be back because I get to bring you a modern deck. Something I don't do very often here on the channel, but when I do, it's because the deck is awesome and I need you to see it. You know, I teased this deck a couple of videos ago, but I figured screw it, I'll do a full profile on the deck because everyone needs to see this glorious thing. So today, let's talk about Grinding Station.
Baby, grind on me. Relax your mind, take your time on me. Let me get deeper, so you ride on me. Now come and text me till your body gets weak. When so grinding, when I hit him, I make him say.
I'll start things off here by saying I'm not the only one that's been on the deck in the past week or so here. It's gotten some attention, some press within the community, you know. So towards the end of the video, I'll shoot you some links, give you some resources to where you can read more about the deck or even watch an experienced, good Magic player get some reps in with it. So look forward to that. But in the meantime, I'm going to do my job and go through it card by card, show you how it works and how it wins. Now, we'll start at the beginning. Obviously, the deck is named for Grinding Station, a relatively random 5th Dawn uncommon that I've actually been in love with since the first time I saw it, which was kind of forever ago at this point. I remember when I was a much weird lad. I've always been a big lad. You know, you can tell that by looking at me, but when I was a much younger lad, I remember staring at a copy of Grinding Station for like an hour, you know, just wondering how can we possibly break this? And well over a decade later, we finally have. You know, sometimes you just gotta wait for some pieces to come out. Be patient, bro. That's exactly what's happened here. You know, it took 15 years or whatever it feels like, but we finally broke Grinding Station. Now, I really want to stress here that the deck has multiple avenues to victory, you know. We have more ways of winning than just assembling a janky 3-card combo. Usually you don't want to rely on janky 3-card combos, you know. They can be difficult to assemble and get all the pieces in place at one time. So you want to have more ways of winning than just that, and we do. But obviously the funniest, most epic way that we have of winning is through the ridiculous infinite combo contained within these 60 cards here. We're going to need Grinding Station for that, but we're also going to need Sly Requisitioner in there. That's the newest card in the deck, and I'm glad that it actually gets some play because this has always looked pretty breakable to me too. But we also need Sword of the Meek, which shouldn't surprise anybody. This is an old combo piece. Now, it's possible to look at these 3 cards for like multiple seconds and still not really understand their relationship to one another or how this works. So let me go through this real quick for posterity and because it's kind of the most important thing about the deck and you need to know how the combo works. So with that in mind, let's just say you have all 3 of these in play at any given time. What you want to do is sacrifice the Sword of the Meek to the Grinding Station, mill your opponent by 3, put that Sword of the Meek in the graveyard. Now, because an artifact went to the graveyard, Sly Requisitioner will give you a servo. Now, look at that. An artifact came into play, you untap your Grinding Station, but you also get your Sword of the Meek back from the graveyard because a 1/1 came into play. Then everything is as it was, you know. All you have to do is lather, rinse, repeat at this point. Sacrifice the Sword of the Meek to the Grinding Station again. That'll put the Sword of the Meek into the graveyard. You get a 1/1 servo off of Sly Requisitioner. Then your Sword of the Meek comes back from the graveyard, goes onto the servo, and your Grinding Station untaps, leaving you to do this again and again and again and again and again. And yes, that is awesome. I know you're thinking to yourself, and you'd be correct. But sometimes, the best thing about a combo deck is its ability to utilize its combo pieces, even when it doesn't have the full combo assembled. And this deck can do that. Sly Requisitioner sometimes comes down as early as turn 2 or even turn 1, depending on what kind of busted start you get. So that's a possibility, and this can actually just go wide, flood the board, and win off of damage. In my experience, and in my time watching the deck being played too, it seems like the deck wins more off of just combat damage, regular old combat damage, than it does off of actually getting the infinite combo. So don't discount that Sly Requisitioner is a great way to flood the board and go wide. But there's also Grinding Station. Now, we have multiple loops that we can put mana into to mill our opponent out if we want to use Grinding Station that way. We've also obviously got the infinite combo, but remember that Grinding Station, you can use it to target yourself if you haven't found your Sword of the Meek yet. That's really, really important. You know, sometimes you'll just grind cards off the top of your library until you find Sword of the Meek if it's your last combo piece. So that just makes our combo way easier to assemble in the first place, which is definitely what you want in a 3-piece combo. For the record, I also like a drumstick in my 3-piece combo, but I'm cha. But anyway, the deck also utilizes Sword of the Meek, even if it doesn't have the full combo put together, because in case you didn't know or you somehow didn't see it coming, this is also a Thopter Foundry deck. Of course it is. You know, we're playing Sword of the Meek, so why not assemble one of the kind of oldest modern combos in the book at this point? But I'll go through it just in case you somehow have not seen this at this point. But all you have to do is have a Sword of the Meek and a Thopter Foundry in play, and then basically for each 1 mana that you pump into Foundry, you get a Thopter. So you get a Thopter for each mana that you have available every single turn. That's basically how this works. Just sacrifice Sword of the Meek to Thopter Foundry. That puts a 1/1 Thopter into play, and look at that. 1/1 came into play, so you get, just like Sly Requisitioner and the way its loop works, you know, you got a 1/1, so you get your Sword of the Meek back, put it on the Thopter. You can pay a mana to sacrifice it again, get it back again when you get the next Thopter, and over and over and over. So the deck is also capable of just doing the old, you know, Thopter Foundry Sword of the Meek trick, flooding the board that way, and also winning through damage that way. So again, the deck has multiple paths to victory and doesn't just fall back on one stupid 3-card combo. Foundry's also pretty good for just keeping us in the game sometimes, you know. It provides flying blockers, it gains us a little bit of life, so we can stall the game for a few turns to find our proper combo pieces. Plus, this doesn't just work with Sword of the Meek, you know. There's some cool loops we can pull off as long as we're willing to pour in some mana. With Grinding Station, mill the opponent down a few times, we can do that. But it's also really good with Sly Requisitioner, you know. It basically gives us double value. Whenever we sacrifice a non-token artifact, we get a Thopter and a Servo if we have a Requisitioner in play. So this just works pretty well with multiple cards in the deck, fills multiple functions, works on defense, works on offense. It's another way to win. Just, yeah, all 4 copies of this, no questions. But just like the cards I've already shown you, from here on out, just about every card in the deck is an artifact. You know, we only play a couple of non-artifact, non-land cards in the entire deck, and I've already shown you one of them, Sly Requisitioner. So we've just got almost nothing but artifacts to show you from this point onward. So we'll kind of, you know, run through these because we need artifacts. You know, aside from Sword of the Meek, sometimes we're trying to use Grinding Station to find Sword of the Meek. We need artifacts for that. And Thopter Foundry specifically requires non-token artifacts. And again, we won't always have Sword of the Meek on board laying around. So we got to have a bunch of artifacts, and it would help if they also help the deck do what it's trying to do. But luckily, we got a lot of ways to do that in Modern, specifically Mox Opal, which is the most expensive card in the entire deck. It's really the whole reason the deck isn't budget in the first place. But if you can find a good enough substitute for Mox Opal, go ahead and knock yourself out, buddy. But this is in some ways a card that makes the deck tick. You know, it gives us early mana, ramps us, keeps the land count low. We've always got plenty of artifacts to get this going as early as possible. And obviously, it's an artifact. The deck needs tons of those, and it's just another one for the deck to use. There's really not a whole lot of substitutes for Mox Opal. So in a perfect world, you'd play all 4. And I really do feel like I have to apologize for the price of the card. Again, you know, it's the entire reason the deck isn't at least somewhat budget. I guess you could argue the deck is budget for Modern. This is not a $1,000 deck. That's not something you see every day, but you still have to shell out like $400 for Mox Opals, and that does suck. But it's really because the deck is looking to play zero-cost artifacts anyway, you know, and this is pretty much the best one we have access to in all of Modern. And to be honest, everything from here on out is pretty simple and in some ways pretty budget for Modern, aside from, I guess, some parts of the mana base. But we're really not playing too much else that's like fancy from this point onward, you know. In the zero-cost artifact category, we're also going to play Memnite and Ornithopter. Obviously, these can be decent early game blockers if we need them to be, but they can also get a Sly Requisitioner down super fast, and they can get your Mox Opal to start producing mana as early as turn 1, which is something you definitely want. It's also worth pointing out that Memnite can swing around a Sword of the Meek pretty well, so should probably mention that. But these zero-cost artifacts are advantageous just due to their mana cost, you know, in and of themselves, no matter what the text on the card is, because they all work really well with Scrap Trawler. You know, we're playing 4 copies of this because it allows us to get back, especially zero-cost artifacts, pretty much at will when we sacrifice other artifacts, which is something we're going to be doing a lot of. Scrap Trawler is another way to just survive sometimes, you know, stay in the game if you need to until you find your real combo pieces. But there are a lot of like cool buybacks, rebuys, and stuff that you can do and sort of loop with Scrap Trawler in the deck. There's just kind of a lot of extra wrinkles that this card brings to the deck. Now we're also going to play 4 copies of Chromatic Star in the deck, which isn't too expensive. It's just $7 freaking for a random common for no reason. Like, there are reasons. The card is popular in Pauper, it's even popular in EDH, and there's a lot of decks in Modern Legacy even that'll play this card. Things like Eggs and other decks that are focused around sacrificing cheap artifacts. It's very good in all of those decks and all of those formats, so I understand why it's so expensive, and it's probably about time for a reprint, so chop chop on that. Get on that, Wizards. We probably need another iteration of this card. Now, if you wanted to save like $25, you could play Chromatic Sphere here, but it's nowhere near as good because of the subtle change in wording. Obviously, you only draw a card when you use Sphere's ability, whereas with Chromatic Star, you draw a card whenever it goes to the graveyard for any reason. That is way better than Sphere, but if you wanted to save some money, that's one alteration you could make to the deck. Same thing with Springleaf Drum. You know, this is another super cheap artifact that has functions outside of its main function, which is obviously to get us mana in this deck. We can often have, you know, servos or thopters or other small creatures that we can, you know, just basically funnel into mana through Springleaf Drum. And that can be really, really important for getting whatever color mana that we need at the time. But obviously, it's a cheap artifact. This will help us get Mox Opal tapping as early as possible, help us play a Sly Requisitioner as early as possible. Once we get a little bit later in the game, we don't really feel guilty about sacking this to a Thopter Foundry or a grinding station if we need to find other combo pieces. So there's just all kinds of benefits to playing Springleaf Drum. We should play this too. Now, in its current form, the deck fills out one of its slots with a Claws of Gix. This is another way of sacrificing artifacts, sacrificing creatures even, if we need to do so. And gain a little bit of life. We have to pump mana into it, but it is just one slot that allows us to loop. I think this slot could possibly be utilized better, but just to stretch the combo potential, I understand why it's used this way. But the final card in the main deck, we're playing 3 copies of Whir of Invention to really tie everything together here. You know, again, most of the deck is artifacts, and you will find yourself needing a specific one an awful lot of the time. Most games, you will need one more artifact to like really get this thing cinched in. So Whir of Invention's great with that. It costs an awful lot of one color of mana, but the mana base is tuned to make this work. Plus, you know, we've got Mox Opal, Chromatic Star, Springleaf Drum. There's plenty of ways to make this mana if we need to, so don't be too scared about the 3 blue here. The deck needs this card. Now, here are the lands here, and there's only 17 of them, but again, remember, like most of our cards don't cost hardly anything to cast. Even Sly Requisitioner can cost 1 mana to cast. Most of our artifacts are 0 or even 1 to cast. We've got Springleaf Drum, Chromatic Star. There's plenty of ways to make mana if we need mana in this deck and make the right colors of mana when we need it to. Now, obviously, this prioritizes blue. You see Hallowed Fountain, Polluted Delta, even just basic islands are in this deck. That's because we need to get to Whir of Invention when we need to get to Whir of Invention. So keep that in mind. But I love decks that don't play that many lands. I'm fascinated. Ever since I started playing Magic, I'm fascinated by decks that play an extremely low land count. And even though this isn't down there with the lowest, it's still a deck that I can get behind, if only because it plays 17 lands. That's awesome. Now here's the sideboard right here, and this is actually more cut and dry than it might appear. You know, Battle at the Bridge is just a removal piece that's awesome late in the game for keeping you in things. It can gain you like 10 life some of the time. So Battle at the Bridge can take care of problem creatures and also keep you in the game for a really long time against aggro and even burn decks that play creatures. So there's that. Welding Jar is another 0-cost artifact and can also deal with, you know, artifact hate that comes in from the board. There's a reason Welding Jar is in the sideboards, because it usually doesn't need to be in here until game 2 or 3, where it can protect Grinding Station and other important artifacts. So there's that. There's also Grafdigger's Cage. This is for decks playing around in their graveyard. Damping Sphere for Tron. That's obvious. Wear and Tear is our anti-artifact, anti-enchantment piece. We've also got Ghirapur Ether Grid in here. This is a very important sideboard card. You know, if for whatever reason we can't win by milling them, maybe they're playing Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn, or something like that, or we just can't win, we can't assemble the combo that quickly. There's all kinds of reasons why we might want to bring in Ether Grid. You could argue that this can kill small creatures, but I would say this is actually in the board more for situations where you have to get around not being able to mill them, you know, being able to just tap all your millions of artifacts after a given point and just finish the game off that way is pretty valuable. Same thing with the Antiquities War. This is just another way of winning the game through attacking if you absolutely have to, or if the text on your artifacts is blank for whatever reason. You know, they play hate cards after board that more or less make your artifacts more useless list than they would otherwise be. This is a way to get some value out of them and just swing with them for the win. Because again, there will come a point in the game, especially after you've done some stuff with Thopter Foundry or Sly Requisitioner, where you just have this enormous board full of artifacts, and Antiquity's War can help you push through and break stalemates and win games. Now, I'm not going to do power rankings this time around because I haven't gotten in enough reps with the deck. I have played some games with it proxied up, but not only have I not gotten in enough reps to feel comfortable doing power rankings, but I'm also really not familiar with Modern as a format, or at least as much as some other people who specialize in Modern, or who cover Modern more than I. But that said, if you're interested in learning more about this deck, there are some additional resources available to you. You know, the other day, Ross Merriam, good pro player, Ross Merriam, wrote a relatively short but still informative article about this deck over on Star City Games. I'll leave a link in the description to that article for you if you're interested in reading it. But also, I guess, celebrated MTG streamer Jeff Hoogland has gotten in a couple of hours worth of games with this deck. He's one of the, more entertaining streamers. If you haven't gotten a load of Jeff Hoogland yet, I do like his content. I'll leave a link in the description to that video on YouTube. Down there in the description, you can see a couple of games with this deck, which will really make all the difference. So check that out if you're into it. And I should also point out that perennial pro competitor Zach Elsick actually played this deck at SCG Dallas, which is a pretty good endorsement. I love Zach Elsick as a pro player. He's always playing like off-the-wall, weird decks that he's trying to break, and I like that about Zach. He's also a pro Smash Brothers competitor, and I believe, if I remember correctly, that he mains Peach and Pikachu, which are two of the characters that I like the most on Smash Brothers. I once tried to be a pro Smash player, but I'm not as good at that as I am at Magic. But in any case, Zach Elsick's living my best life at this point. So I've always liked Zach, and him playing the deck is definitely a ringing endorsement. So check out all the additional stuff I've got down there in the description box for you. And remember that if you click the first link in the description, that'll take you over to the deck list on TCG Player, which is my sponsor, yes, full disclosure, but also the actual, for real, factually cheapest place you can buy this deck online. This thing is like $650 right now, mostly courtesy of the Mox Opals, but a lot of Modern decks are well over $1,000. So I'm not going to go so far as to say this is budget or anything, but for Modern, you could definitely be spending way more money than $650. And of course, most of that is the Mox Opals. So once you secure those, pretty close to having the deck built. It's like random commons and uncommons from other sets at this point. Like there's a, Sly Requisitioner is like a 10-cent uncommon from a set that's currently in Standard, so that shouldn't be too hard to get your hands on. But remember, don't overpay for decks. Go over there to TCG Player, click the link in the description. Even if you're not going to buy the deck, it's an easy way to view the deck list in a compact form. So click the link in the description. They actually really like when they see that people click the link, so it helps me out too. Do it. But I guess I'm tapped out for this one. Make sure you do all the other YouTube stuff, though, on your way out. Make sure you click the like button. Share the video around. This deck really needs to be seen. This is one of the funkiest, craziest infinite combo decks in Modern in a good long time, and I really like this deck, so I want more people to see it. Share it around. Subscribe to the channel. We are so close to 100,000, you guys. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done it yet, or if you've never seen my face before. Make sure you sub to get more content, because we do a lot of it around here. So do all that stuff. Follow me on Twitter, SBMTGDev, or throw me $1 a month. $1 every 30 days or 31 days or occasionally 27 days. Or 28 days over there on Patreon.com. I'll leave a link in the description. If you like my face, you want to help out around here and keep me doing this, then just throw me $1 a month. That's all I ask. It helps tremendously. And with that, I got to get out of here because I've actually been recording for what feels like 5 hours at this point. This is a long one, you guys. But in any case, I hope it condenses to a watchable video because I really want people to know about this deck and understand how ridiculous it is, because this is my favorite Modern deck in a long time. Again, I don't really do Modern decks unless I really, really like them. So pay attention. This deck is awesome. So pretty sure I'm done now, though. It's your turn. Take to the comments section. Let me know how you felt about it and do all that other stuff I mentioned. But in any case, pretty sure I'm done for now, and I'll catch you cats later. Thanks for watching, my wizards. Spread love and be kind.